Hello, and welcome to the Dine Dash virtual lunch series brought to you by uGO and University Circle Incorporated. My name is Annie Pease, and I'm the Director of Transportation at UCI. The Dine Dash lunch series has brought 45-minute virtual discussions on sustainable transportation topics over the last 5 months. This is the 5th of 5 webinars. If you've missed any of our previous sessions, all of the recordings are posted on our website at universitycircle.org/Dine-and-Dash. For those of you new to uGO, uGO is all about sustainable transportation. We have a website called ugointhecircle.com. Those are the letters uGO in the circle.com with information you need about getting to and around University Circle on all modes of transportation. As an umbrella nonprofit organization in University Circle, UCI convenes our anchor institutions to collaborate on and advance sustainable transportation in the district. During non-pandemic times, we host in-person programs like Confident Urban Cycling classes, Bike to Work Day events, and shared mobility demonstrations. We also issue a monthly e-newsletter to keep subscribers in the loop on local transportation projects, transportation service changes, and upcoming events. With our Dine and Dash series, we've hosted speakers on a range of sustainable transportation topics to raise awareness of the many options available to those traveling around the district and to engage our community in a virtual discussion on each one. So today's session will follow a very similar format. Before we get started and I introduce our speakers, we have a raffle drawing. At each Dine and Dash session, we are raffling off a uGO to Lunch prize pack. We'll have a $20 gift card to an uptown restaurant of your choice, plus $20 worth of scooter riding credit. So drum roll, please. I'll pull our raffle drawing here. I'm very excited to announce that Linda Cooper is our raffle winner today. So Linda, congratulations. We'll be in touch by email for you with the information you'll need to claim your prize. So today's session is all about shared mobility. If you've been in University Circle over the last couple of years, you've seen some changes in the types of shared mobility options available to you. We've had docked pedal bikes. We've had a hybrid system where pedal bikes could go station to station or locked to a bike rack. The most recent iteration has been the introduction of dockless e-scooters. Shared mobility is an exciting evolution in sustainable transportation, especially in a dense urban area like University Circle. There are so many destinations nearby, but some are just far enough away where walking feels inefficient. But driving and possibly paying again to park your car seems time-consuming and expensive. So here with us today are 2 experts in shared mobility. We'll hear first from Calley Mersmann, who is joining us from the City of Cleveland's City Planning Commission. She is the Bicycle and Pedestrian Coordinator with the City of Cleveland. Second, we'll hear from Michael Beck, who is SPIN's Operation Manager for Cleveland. So we will have time after our speakers' presentations for moderated questions with the audience. We'll be taking questions through the Q&A chat box, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can in the last part of our session today. So throughout, as the speakers present and you have questions on their topics, please enter your questions into the Q&A box. With that, I will turn the presentation over to our first speaker, Calley Mersmann. Calley, welcome.
Great, thank you so much, Annie. Hi, everyone. As Annie said, I'm Calley Mersmann. I work in the City Planning Commission as the Bicycle and Pedestrian Coordinator, which also includes helping to coordinate the Shared Mobility Program. It's great to be here with you guys for lunch today. So just some basics for those that aren't familiar with what shared mobility is. These are stand-up e-scooters, e-bikes, and pedal bikes that are available out along the public right-of-way for rent, usually for a short time period. So we're not talking about days or weekends, but just a single trip. The devices, the e-scooters and bikes that we have right now are dockless, which means that they don't have to go to specific hubs and be locked up. They can be left sort of from point to point within the public right-of-way. And the way that this works is that each device has a GPS unit attached to it. The companies, like Michael will talk about later, can track where that device is through that GPS system. And the GPS also helps us to manage and regulate the shared mobility system. And as a user, what you do is you download an app for one of these 4 companies that we have currently active in Cleveland. The app will include a login, a sign up where you can enter your credit card information. Our companies also offer cash payment options where you can text or call with a cash card to get access to them. But the apps, which are the main way to access them, have maps of the city. You can see where devices are nearby you. So maybe you need to walk half a block or so to find one. You go up to that device, there's a QR code on top of it, and you can scan it and start your ride. So that is basically how that short-term rental system works. As I mentioned, we have 4 companies currently active in Cleveland. Those are Bird, Link, Spin, and Lime. Each of those 4 have a stand-up e-scooter model, as you can see here. And this summer, Lime also introduced an e-bike option. There are only about 50 of these around town, so you may or may not have seen them. But these e-bikes are pedal assist, which means that you do have to pedal to get some of that power, but they give you a little boost to help ride. You may notice that these look pretty familiar and similar to the UH bikes that we had previously. You can think of this as the next generation, like the grandchild of that bike, as it has evolved forward and added some e-boost. Next slide, please, Annie. In general, we have some key goals for shared mobility to achieve in Cleveland. And there's a lot of text on the screen. I know I'm not going to read it all to you, but our key goals are increasing mobility options for residents, managing the public space to make sure that it is safe and other activities can still go around, including people walking on sidewalks, parking on the curbs, boarding buses, etc. Promoting equity in transportation access, keeping an eye on safety through our Vision Zero initiative and the goals to eliminate fatal and serious injury crashes on our roadways, putting in place and maintaining a regulatory and evaluation structure that's adaptable. We know that these technologies were new a handful of years ago. Different shared mobility technologies might be in our future, and the city needs to be able to have a structure that can regulate that and adapt to changes and innovation. And finally, contribute to improved quality of life for people in the city. So what the shared mobility timeline has looked like to date, some of you may remember back in August of 2018, we had a surprise scooter drop by a company in Cleveland. They just sort of showed up overnight. We weren't really sure what to do about them. I at least ran out of City Hall and took a quick ride to see what it was all about. But there was no regulatory structure, there were no permits. And ultimately, after a couple of weeks, the city asked that company to withdraw their scooters to give us time to establish a structure to permit and create guidelines around scooter use. Throughout the winter of 2018 and into 2019, we did a lot of research about what other communities did and what has been successful, as well as what the shared mobility technology, like the GPS we mentioned, et cetera, allowed us to do, and put a permit system in place that involved passing legislation through City Council, as well as creating administrative rules and regulations that serve as that little bit more flexible guidelines and guidance, in addition to what is in the codified ordinances of the city. And all of that culminated in the kickoff in August 2019 of a 6-month demonstration period for companies. We had a competitive permit application process and ultimately issued permits to 5 companies to come into Cleveland, set their scooters out, and to monitor how that went. That took us through February. As everyone knows, the world got a little bit crazy right after that. And as COVID was coming out, everything was shutting down. Our scooter companies also put a pause on operations, mostly based on reduced demand. No one was really going anywhere in those early, well, many of us were not going many places in those early days. And then in June, when we had a chance to sort of get a handle on sanitization, COVID messaging, et cetera, the companies started back up with the permission of the city. In June of 2020, we also had sort of a one-year review of the legislation that was in place, made a couple of updates, including increasing the maximum speed for stand-up scooters from what was 12 miles an hour to 15 miles per hour. And we're hoping for a much more normal and routine annual permit cycle coming into the future. So June of 2020 to May of 2021 was sort of getting that in sync. And then just this past June in 2021, we issued permits again to the 4 companies previously mentioned, and are hoping to have this sort of June to May annual permit cycle. Next slide, please, Annie. All right, so I've talked about the authorizing legislation that council passed and the administrative rules and regulations that the city has in place to govern the scooter and bike company operations. All of those documents are linked online at our scooter and bike page, so feel free to visit that and look through those if you're interested. To reiterate what I mentioned, we have this annual competitive application process for interested vendors, followed by permits issued to those vendors that meet our minimum criteria for acceptability. And there were also a lot of conversations as the program was getting set up about how to make sure that as the program expands to neighboring cities and communities, I think, which is especially relevant for University Circle. You guys have a lot of flow between Cleveland Heights and other communities to and from University Circle, but there weren't really abrupt rule changes that riders would need to deal with. So we've been coordinating through the County Office of Sustainability, and there's also a county-wide license that sets some of those general operating rules county-wide, in addition to the City of Cleveland permit. To date, since operations started in August of 2019, we've seen over 536,000 rides covering over 600,000 miles. People have spent more than 9 million minutes on scooters. And we did see the average trip distance and duration really increase during the COVID time, potentially due to an increase in essential trips and possibly recreational trips, as people, being outside in the fresh air and moving around is one of the safest ways we've all been able to connect with people and the places that we want to go over the last year and a half. So prior to COVID, the average trip distance was under 1 mile. We're now at 1.16 miles. And the average trip durations were around the 10-minute mark, but now we're looking at almost 17 minutes on an average shared mobility trip. Through the GPS tracking, we do have the ability to get a sense of where people are riding scooters, which is really interesting and helpful from a bicycle connectivity planning perspective. As you can see, the volume of our trips are happening in the downtown area still, although we do see University Circle emerging as a secondary trip hub, with Euclid as sort of that multimodal spine, and then roadways extending in either direction through the Case campus and some of the institutions in the University Circle area. Some key rules that the city has in place governing the shared mobility program right now. I mentioned the speed cap for scooters is now 15 miles an hour. The pedal e-bikes are able to go up to 20 miles per hour, which is consistent with the state law. Operating hours for both bikes and scooters is currently from 5 in the morning to 9 in the evening. And we have designated locations that operators like Spin can put devices out within the public right of way. The way that these work is, as we said, they're dockless, so there are not assigned hubs with racks and things like that. But we have about 200 locations citywide, mostly focused in the downtown University Circle and surrounding neighborhood areas, where operators can put out their scooters and bikes for rent. Users can ride them and park them anywhere in the service area that they would like to, but there's an incentive in place for people that, again, in their rides and park in those sort of preferred or designated locations. So we have had a public feedback portal open since the very beginning, and I get calls and emails. We hear feedback from people as they're out and around. Our top requests in terms of managing the scooter and bike program is to allow longer operating hours, especially later into the evening, and to, of course, provide more facilities for people to feel safe using them on the streets, more bike lanes and paths, things like that. In terms of top issues, we hear a lot about people riding on the sidewalks, and I'm going to get into some of the riding and parking rules in the upcoming slides, but sidewalk riding and parking behaviors are some of our key educational targets moving forward. And this quote here is pretty symbolic of what we tend to hear. People in general are supportive of the scooters and shared mobility programs. They like seeing people riding them. It adds a little bit more vibrancy to community life, and provides an important transportation alternative to just driving a car. It helps make transit more connected for first and last mile trips, but there are real hurdles in terms of riders perhaps not being solicitous or respectful of pedestrians on the sidewalk, not parking them correctly. Sometimes they get tipped over and things like that. So shifting gears into how to both be a safe rider and a safe driver on these types of devices. If you're on a scooter or a bike, please remember to ride in the street, following the flow of traffic and all traffic laws. Be visible, do everything you can to never assume a driver sees you, but take that lane and own it. Be visible in the roadway, be predictable, don't swerve, don't cut up on the sidewalk, down into the roadway, going backwards against the flow of traffic. If you're in the roadway following all traffic laws, all of the other road users around you know what to expect from you, and you are visible and predictable, which leads to safety. Park responsibly. I have another slide coming up about those details. Keep aware of the deactivation times, and we also have some geofences in place across town, especially with special events and around entertainment districts that that restrict riding at certain times, but just be aware that scooters deactivate at 9 p.m. So if you're leaving somewhere at 10 p.m. and counting on a scooter, you're not going to be able to use it. Keep that in mind. Don't be distracted. Don't carry things. Be sure that you have control over your device as you're going. And we really encourage everyone to wear a helmet. Of course, each of our companies in operation in Cleveland will provide a free helmet upon request. So be aware that that resource is available for you. All right, I promised to get into the specifics of parking. So here are a couple of guides from other communities. The key things to make sure are that, number one, scooters are not blocking the sidewalk. That means leaving at least 5 feet of clear pedestrian zone walkway for people to continue to come in and out of doors and walk along their destination. Scooters should be upright and parked in what is called the furniture zone. That's the area where there are street trees, benches, trash cans, utility poles, etc. So not right up on the curb where if a gust of wind comes, it tips over into the street, but in that furniture zone area where people are not walking and it's tucked out of the way with other things that are sort of in that street amenity strip. And the graphic illustrates that here pretty clearly. Next slide, please. Maybe we have some people here who are not scooter riders necessarily, or not bike riders, but you have interacted with scooter riders or bike riders on the road. So if you're a driver, please just remember that people riding scooters and bikes have a right to the roadway. They have a legal right to take the entire lane if there are debris or anything right up against the curb. We actually encourage in bike safety classes to keep about 3 feet away from the curb in case of potholes, sticks, glass, etc. So be sure and share the road. Please don't drive distracted, put your phone away or put it on driving mode so that you can be alert and take note of slower moving riders. We have a 3-foot passing law in Cleveland and in the state of Ohio, I believe. So if you are coming up on a slower moving bike rider or scooter rider, you are allowed to pass even over a double yellow line if you slow down and make sure that there is no oncoming traffic. But always either change lanes to pass or at least make sure that you're leaving 3 feet between the person on scooter and the bike and your vehicle that you're driving around. We also are trying to promote what is called the Dutch reach. So you may have heard of being doored before. When someone parks in an on-street parking space, there might be a bike lane or just the general area that people on scooters and bikes ride by can sometimes conflict with an opening car door of someone trying to get out. We recommend that you actually take your right hand and twist around to open the door when you're in an area with scooter and bike riders, so that you're actually looking back over you. You're not flinging your door open in front of someone's path. And finally, I know it can be sometimes frustrating if you're stuck behind someone that is going slower than you are and you're in a rush. But really, if you take a deep breath, you're likely only delayed a couple of seconds. So please be patient and help everyone get where they want to go quickly and safely. So that wraps up my portion of this. I wanted to mention quickly a couple of things that we are looking to update about the program, what's on the horizon for us. As I mentioned, right now, scooters are really focused in the downtown core and surrounding neighborhoods, as well as University Circle. We're looking toward more equitable access throughout neighborhoods and helping ensure that this type of transportation option is available to people. We're also looking at what other cities have done in terms of allowing different operators to have fleet size increases based on their compliance with our regulations and demand for scooters. That's called dynamic fleet sizing. We currently have a flat cap of 400 devices per permit. And we're working on some parking typologies, including racks for scooters and bikes, sidewalk stickers, signage, etc., and educational messaging to help reinforce to people the way they should be parking in that furniture zone area. As I mentioned, a lot of this information is available on our website. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if there's more content you'd like to see online, that would be helpful. Very open to that feedback as well. Thank you.
Calley, thank you so much for the informative overview. For those who have joined since we got started, feel free throughout our speakers' presentations to drop your questions into the Q&A box. We will have a moderated Q&A with our speakers after our next presentation. So up next, we have Michael Beck with Spin to talk about operations in Cleveland from one of the scooter companies, the operator's perspective. Michael, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. Like Andy said, I'm Mike Beck, the Cleveland Operations Supervisor for Spin. And what I want to do is kind of give everybody a sneak peek into how scooter companies operate generally in Cleveland. So what we'll do is we'll talk about Spin generally, our market operations team and structure, our operations model. We'll dip into some of our technology and some of the user operations. And we'll go on to the next slide, please. And so we'll start out with Spin in general. So Spin was founded in 2017, currently operating in many cities across the world. Our mission is to give people the freedom to move. And what that means to me is that everybody has the option to get where they need to go with their choice of mobility option. Yep, next slide, that's fine. Where are we? Well, we're in over 70 cities, over 30 colleges, and 2 cities in Canada, which I'm super stoked about. Gotta love our northern neighbors. One thing I would like to point out there are Ohio. You see, we really love Ohio. We have 5 locations in Ohio: Cleveland, Akron, Columbus, Dayton, and Athens. And one of our newest launches is our next door neighbor there in Pittsburgh. Next slide, please. If you plan on doing any international travel, we also have you covered with many cities in Germany, UK, and Spain, which I'm hoping for a transfer. No. So some of our local market facts. Spin has been operating in the city of Cleveland since September of 2019. We've had scooters on the ground. And like Calley mentioned, we do have a flat cap of 400 scooters in the city, and it does fluctuate with the season. So as we see the colder weather, we do see demand drop, and we do pull our scooters back in numbers. And then as, excuse me, and then in February, as we have those 60-degree and sunny days, we do increase as people get out and move about. We currently have a workforce of 14 full-time employees. We operate throughout Cleveland, so as far east is University Circle and beyond, and as far west as almost to the Lakewood border. And we have seen trips go that far, which is a very long scooter ride. Again, Calley mentioned the operational hours and the speed, but what we operate is our Max 2.0 model as seen below and then up on the Cleveland picture as well. We do plan on moving to our swappable model, which means that our operations specialists don't have to break their backs anymore, taking the entire scooter back to the warehouse to charge. There'll be a battery hatch that they can open and just swap out the battery and then straighten up the scooter, and it's ready to go. What this does for us is it'll allow a more even keel of scooter numbers out on the street, and that availability is important to people who are looking to use the scooters. Next slide, please. And we're growing. So just recently we brokered a deal with these 4 cities. Very excited to get into Euclid, South Euclid, East Cleveland, and the city of Cleveland Heights. That's coming up very soon. We have small deployments there, but we expect big things from these cities as we expand the micromobility program. Next slide, please. So how do we do it? So the scooter business, the micromobility business, has started out through the gig economy. And one thing that Spin learned very quickly is that working with gig workers, it becomes very difficult to have good control of your operations and your program. So essentially what you're having are people with no stake in the company whatsoever out there representing your company, which is bad for everything. So what Spin has done is we moved to the W-2 model where we have full-time employees who are earning a living wage and benefits, time off, all of that. So they no longer have, they use the company vehicles. They use, you can see there, we provide them with safety equipment. Nothing comes out of the employee's pocket to do their job. And we think that's the right way to do it. It also gives us, you can see there the 5 pillars of our W-2 model, where we have access to sanitize the scooters and make sure our employees are safe as well. We can make sure that the scooters are safe and repaired. We make every effort we possibly can to make sure that the scooters go out 100% operational. And it allows us to be a little more responsive in taking care of our stakeholders out in the city. Next slide, please. So what does a day in an operations specialist life look like? Well, when in the morning, what we do is we go out there and we start scooping up all of the dead scooters. And what that does is we bring them back in to the warehouse, sanitize them, that if anything needs, that's done, and then we plug them back into charge. We then swap out the charged scooters, bring them out, and get them out on the street for the customers. So they'll bring them out to the designated points that Calley mentioned and drop off to backfill the scooters that we picked up. Then what we do is we go into rebalance mode, which what that means is we go out and we will pick up any call-ins from stakeholders out in the city that would like scooters relocated. We also look at scooters that may have gone out into the far reaches of the area, and we bring them back in. And then we also make sure that scooters are upright, first and foremost, and out of the way of pedestrians. And then we begin the process again. And this goes on 7 days a week and 24 hours a day. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to dip into some tools and technology. One of the big things that we do is we try and shape behavior of our users through geofencing. And geofencing allows us to do many different things. And this is actually a really good snapshot, not just you know, pandering to the group here, but this is a good snapshot. It shows a lot of our geofencing capability, where everything doesn't have to be binary. We can do many different things to control behavior. So for instance, over on the university, the Case Western Reserve University's campus, it's a little more congested. And so what they wanted was a slower scooter speed as they go in and out through those quad areas. And so what we've done is we instituted slow zones in those areas where scooters are 8 miles an hour. We also have a big no parking zone over the Cleveland Clinic campus, just by design there from the program. And so scooters are allowed to travel freely on the roadways through that area, but they're not able to end their ride in that zone. Also, that info zone towards the top is an area over the Center for the Blind. So what we've added there was an information zone, and the red area inside that black box is a no parking zone to keep scooters out of the area where our blind citizens tend to walk. And then the information zone informs people of why we're requiring a no parking zone in there and to be respectful of anyone who might be sight impaired. We have many more different zones, but what we do is we use that to largely control people in operation, or how they operate the scooters in kind of a large sweeping motions. Next slide, please. And so the Spin app is the primary mechanism we'll use to communicate with our users. And so what they can do is you can see there, the top picture is kind of an eye candy. The bottom right picture is more of what the person's going to see whenever they open their Spin app. And so what we're looking at there is University Circle and the scooters from a couple of days ago in their locations. And what this tells people is they'll open up the app, and so what they'll see are the locations of the scooters around them. So let's say they're in that parking lot 661 employees parking, and they're looking for a scooter. Well, they see they have many options, but then also a little more detail, they can see the battery of the scooter, so the battery level of the scooter. So if they are planning on one of those, if they're going over to Lakewood for some reason, they can choose a scooter with a more 100% battery versus like a 50% if you're going on a smaller trip. You'll also see they're kind of obscured there, so I apologize for that, but there's some little green circles with dollar signs in them. And what we do to also help reward good behavior and good parking are our incentive plan for parking. So anywhere where the designated spots are for from the city to deploy scooters, that's where someone can park their scooter and receive a credit back from their ride, which is typically 50 cents. So it's a nice little incentive for somebody to return the scooter back to one of those locations that are designated by the city. Next slide, please. And a couple other things that we have here. So again, our main communication platform is the app. So we can't really stand on the street corner and shout to people. So what we do is we try and put as much as communication as we can in the app. And so you can see there on the first thing on the left is our geofences that we've seen in the beginning. When tapped on, they will show you the message of what the geofence is supposed to do. So for instance, here on Case Western Reserve University, it's letting them know, oh, this area is a slow zone. So they may ride into the zone, maybe a first-time rider ride into the zone, become confused why their scooter suddenly went from 15 to 8 miles an hour, and they can look in the app and it'll tell them. And we have information zones that can tell them specific pieces of information. For instance, like on game day, we can show them that there's different messages that we can put out. Also within the app, you can report issues of improper riding, parking, damaged vehicles, all of that. Now, you don't necessarily have to have a funded Spin app to use this. So if if you're out there on the street and you see something and you have the app on your phone but no money in it, you can still report these things, or you can chat live with our customer support. And then one of the things that we have also are spin passes. Next slide, please. And then here's a few more safety features that we have. Up in the top, we see our parking screens is what we call it, but it's our information when you start your ride where we can put information out. We also have a safety quiz where somebody can get $5 for a passing grade, and it goes over all of the safety items that Calley mentioned in the previous one. We're also looking to roll out here, hopefully later this fall. On the bottom there, what you see is our late night riding test, which is typically the time people are intoxicated. And what this will do is it'll test reaction time. So hopefully we'll get this out here. And if they do not pass the test, it'll lock it out for a predetermined amount of time. Next slide, please. I think we're almost done. And then we try to make ourselves accessible. So you can, there's a phone number that goes to our centralized support team on the scooter. Also, if you want to text to us on each of our scooter, we have a sticker at the base. You can see it at the top there. You could just text parking, and that goes directly to our Cleveland operations team. I see all of those come through where we can communicate, and you can send us messages, and then the mentioned ones before. Okay, next slide. And we'll just roll through these ones real quick. Free helmets, I think I saw the question there. If you go to our website and you go under just spin.app is our website, you'll see those 4 partner ride, company, and careers. Just hit the ride and helmets, and all you have to pay is shipping, and we'll send you a free helmet. Also, you can see us out at almost any tabling event where we're at in Cleveland, and we usually have a whole box of helmets just ready to give away. I love seeing people on helmets. Couple other things here, since we're talking about University Circle. I want to mention Everyday Heroes. Spin has a program that allows free rides for hospital employees, something I'm very proud of. Also, Spin Access, we push that very heavily in Cleveland. Anybody who has any sort of government assistance can sign up for Spin Access and get half price rides. And I think we have one more slide. And just our 2025 path to carbon negative. So we're working very hard to make sure we recycle everything. And we have green vehicles that we're already rolling out in Washington, D.C., electric vehicles to deliver the scooters. And we're also making smaller efforts here in Cleveland, where we plan on rebalancing with bicycles. Next slide. And I think that should be it. Okay, that is it. And I believe I will hand it back over to Annie.
Thank you, Michael. Another very informative presentation. Thank you for your time. We do have about 10 minutes, a little less than 10 minutes for Q&A. So I'm going to jump right into the questions we've received so far through the Q&A box. Again, if you have questions, feel free to type them in there. I'm going to direct this question to Michael. Michael, could you talk about, for someone without a cell phone, just walk us through how can they access scooters without a cell phone?
So let me start with the easy part of that. If you don't have a smartphone, you can still access. We have a program that is on our website, spin.app, and you can go there and we can. It's simple. You'll call in and establish yourself as someone who does not have a smartphone. And what you can do is when you come up to a scooter, they'll give you a number that you can call, and you call that in and you give your personal PIN number, and they'll unlock the scooter for you. And then you ride where you go. Then you call that number again and give them your PIN number and tell them to lock it up, and they can. If you have no cell phone at all, it's a little more difficult. I guess you could do it from a landline. But payphones aren't as common as they once were. But without a cell phone, being completely out of a cell phone, it becomes very difficult.
Thank you. Calley, I'll direct this question to you. Are there any efforts to streamline the apps so that there could be one app instead of users having to download multiple apps? We'll start with Calley, and Mike, if you want to weigh in on the far end of that question, you're welcome to do so as well.
Thanks, Annie. Yes, from a user perspective, that would be really awesome. We have been looking at what other communities and companies have been doing to integrate. And I would love to hear from Mike about maybe his Pittsburgh experience, because I know they're part of a special mobility technology partnership there. What we have seen and where we are right now is that there's a little bit of integration happening. I think in the transit app, scooters and bikes are now showing up when people use the transit app to perhaps, plan the bus ride and get real-time bus information. You can see where scooters and bikes are. You can't actually pay for them though. You would sort of have a sense of where a device is, and then you would still need to open up the separate app. Some of the companies that we have permitted are part of company agglomerations. So for example, Lime and Uber are interrelated. And so there is some opportunity to connect and book a Lime scooter through the Uber app. But in terms of something that is like a Cleveland shared mobility app to connect with and pay for scooters of every type, we are not there yet. I do know though that there are groups around the country that are working to sort of overcome those barriers and have something that is a more integrated mobility as a service app. And Mike, maybe there are things you can add to that from your experience in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, so Pittsburgh is very interesting, and I'm a novice at it since it is the second week that we have been launched in Pittsburgh. But it's a very interesting situation there. So the city of Pittsburgh decided to basically develop a micromobility program that takes all form of, well, I'm sorry, not micromobility, but mobility program to help people get around the city that allows people to see all the different forms of mobility in one place. And so you can do bus, car. I believe they have not stand-up scooters, but like the sit-down riding moped scooters that you have, plus Spin is there as well. And what it is, it was just an effort by the city to bring all that together to make sure that everybody could get around fairly easily, which is similar to what this question is addressing. One single app that everybody can just dip into and find your desired transportation option. And there are other forms of this around the country, like Calley mentioned. But it's not quite as common as you would think.
Thank you. Another question here. At one point, people could earn money charging scooters. Is that still the case?
Yeah. So with with Spin, you can apply and come be an employee with Spin, and you can earn money. But we did have, there was a point where we had collectors is what we had. And those were people who used their own vehicles to drive around and pick up the scooters. What we found though, is it was mostly unfair to the individual who was doing the gig work, because especially in today's economy with gas being like over $3, they're using their wear and tear on their own vehicle, their time distance between scooters. Many times they might work all night and lose money. And so we deem that unfair and sort of as preying upon people who might have actually needed that money. And so we ceased that, and what we did was we just went all to a W-2 operation. For the other companies, I am unsure if they still do that model.
Yeah, that's okay.
I know they have recently.
Calley, are you aware if any of the other companies are having individuals charge scooters?
Most of them have evolved away from that model that we saw a couple of years ago and are moving more in the direction of either a limited number of contractors that are more intensive, not just like picking up a scooter in the evening and plugging it in, or W2 full-time payroll employees like Spin uses.
Great. Thanks. Mike, another question for you. We've seen these changes in device types with shared pedal e-bikes and shared scooters. Is the shared e-scooter, the final iteration of shared mobility? Or do you think there will be changes in the future? Maybe a big picture question here.
Oh, we've reached perfection and we're gonna stop right now. So we actually are rolling out 3 different new models of scooters with different features upon them. One of the things that I mentioned was the swappable scooters. And what that does is we just swap the battery out there on the street, and that should be coming to Cleveland here in the next couple of months, which I'm super excited about because now I don't have to lift scooters continuously all day, every day. And we just have to move batteries. A couple other things that we have out is a sturdier model that is in its beta testing right now. It's the S100T, and Spin being owned by Ford, that scooter is being produced by Ford, designed, produced, and maintained by Ford. And so what that does for us, it allows us to make adjustments to the model. It's a sturdier model, and we have control over supply chain, which makes it easier for us to maintain the scooters. And we have other different things that we're, also working on, such as the Drover technology, which is going to tell people or tell the rider and report back to us whether the rider is riding on the sidewalk, in the street, and give us whether the scooter is parked incorrectly. And we're also working on our new model. It's a 3-wheeled scooter that we're still working out the bugs on. But what it does is it'll allow us to remotely move these scooters. I think I saw a comment about, wheelchair ramps and things. If it's improperly parked on a wheelchair ramp or in front of a door, it'll allow us to sense that and remotely drive the scooter away from those areas and park them in responsible places. All coming very soon.
Well, what an exciting change. We could carry on all afternoon with questions. We have reached the end of our time. Our speakers have kindly included their contact information. So any additional questions, feel free to engage with myself, with Calley, or with Michael Beck. Thank you all for joining us today. A special thank you to our speakers. And check out our website where you can find all the recordings of our Dine Dash sessions, including today's, and the next 24 to 36 hours. Thank you for joining, and have a great afternoon.